Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm pleased to be joined by Jessy Dhanjal, CEO and founder of Care.io, and this is going to be a really interesting interview. I'm really excited about this. How are you today, Jessy?
Well, I'm doing great. Thank you for the invitation, Dario, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. So let's just jump in here and maybe just start by describing your company. What does Care.io do?
So basically, Care.io was formed out of a need in the industry. So when we started, so basically we were very much into my previous 20 years have been in diagnostic imaging, a lot of it in diagnostic imaging. So basically that's where we started. So in a short sentence, Care.io is like a healthcare data governance and interoperability platform. So which was designed to basically streamline data aggregation and simplify interoperability. So because we realize that there are a lot of complex interactions which happen between payers, providers, patients, health systems, and I've been observing it over the last many years, and I believe breaking down the data silos and fostering collaboration was the area I wanted to focus on. And because of my background in imaging, I thought this is a great fix or a great problem to address. So we started in diagnostic imaging, which is our core strength. We evolved into a healthcare data governance platform, which brings in imaging centers, radiologists, referring physicians, integrating with the risk pack systems, basically literally simplifying the data aggregation, sharing, workflows. But over time period, over the last 4 or 5 years, we have evolved into more than just radiology. We started in radiology or imaging, but now we are more on the clinical side, addressing other aspects of the healthcare ecosystem.
Interesting. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So basically, literally, what I call is basically, so like for example, like we are now talking to physicians, we are talking to how to basically make their interactions with the payers or interactions with patients more simple. We everybody is there is an integration, but then there are limitations to a lot of vendor integrations. We are trying to go beyond the walls which are put up by vendors and go beyond it and make integrations or simplification of this data sharing to a point where we want to basically just empower the patients. Our goal, I envision basically a place where patients are driving decisions, not the other way around. Right now, decisions are driven and patients are participants on it, but we anticipate that patient health systems would become a very important aspect in the future where it is more patient driven and providers and everybody else is a participant, other way around. So that's
Interesting.
what I see this going.
Give us maybe like an example of your vision for how would this come to life then for the patient?
So I think, so for example, right, we talk about LLMs and we talk about agentic AIs and we talk about, this data silos and interoperability. But imagine a place where patients actually have all of this data collated, and aggregated in a form, which is basically then you have agents and you have on sitting on top of it, like a personalized LLM, which actually takes in all the medical dictionaries and medical guidelines and everything, and it actually empowers the patient to actually drive the decisions, where the patient is basically kind of more informed, not like a patient is becoming a physician, but patient is more informed in terms of being an active participant. So when something is needed, a test is needed, or something which like an agent can tell a patient that you need to do this, or possibly you should talk to a physician, your physician, about these things, because based on what I analyze in your data, based on your recent Fitbit data set or based on your recent imaging data, and when I connect all the dots, I foresee that you should anticipate that you need to do this kind of activity, or maybe get these things checked, or this is the time for you to go for your regular exam, or go for this screening or that. Basically, agent playing a more active role in patient care and then working in collaboration with the physician. I think one of the things which I've seen, and this is just my personal take on how I see the industry, the relationship between a patient and a physician was very pious earlier on. And this is going back 20, 30, 40 years. And over time, commercialization of that particular relationship, the connection has spread it so thin. We have made it so thin to a point where nor the patients are happy, nor the physicians are happy because of all the things which have evolved. And then we pile a lot of other silos of data on top of it. So basically, I want to basically bring it back to a point where patients and physicians are having more meaningful relationship or conversations and driving decisions, like a physician and a patient having more interactive and realistic conversations, which have not been happening because of all that data being piled on. Physicians are overburdened, and patients are under trained. Like patients don't
Right,
know
right.
how to interpret data. Physicians don't know how to deal with 1,000 patients because now they have EMRs with gazillions of records. So you have to simplify to a point where interactions are more meaningful. And I think AI and all this plays a very important role because earlier it was impossible, but now AI basically kind of levels the playing field.
Well, it's really interesting because I know, the health system that I work with, they have an app, and I have my primary care physician and whatever he uses his EHR and EMR and whatever my data is in there. But then if I go to a different doctor or if I go get a medical test, for example, it makes its way into the app, but it doesn't seem like they're really talking to each other.
They can't, and many times these apps are only limited to where they can get the data. What if you go to a physician who doesn't integrate with that app,
Right,
right? Now you are left with two different apps, five different portals. Like
right.
we end up creating our own problems, and then we start solving those problems. We create new set of problems.
Interesting. Wow. So, uh, tell me a little bit about how you've incorporated AI, because obviously you seems like you were in business far before the big AI wave came in. And how have you incorporated it? How have you incorporated to ensure that I guess it's safe and compliant, all the sort of the normal concerns?
So I think so AI plays a very significant role in every aspect of care delivery. And I think it is not just one place where it plays an important role than others. There are many areas where you can. When we started working on Care.io, I realized the fact that, information there, because there are these interactions happening between physicians and patients and health systems and imaging centers and providers and all of these care team, they participate. Even your related people, like your family is
Yep.
part of that as well, your friends are part of that as well. So basically when you bring everybody into a mix and you realize that your AI, what is AI? AI is basically, AI is there to empower, right? Obviously, right? The goal is that we are empowering somewhere, someone, either a physician or a patient, something we are doing with AI. And empowerment happens at different levels of data. So you can empower by extracting data, streamlining, making it more clean. Like that's where AI machine learning comes into play. Or then once you have the streamlined and clean data, you connect those dots to kind of derive insights, kind of derive basically kind of giving some kind of hints to physicians that maybe you should look into this patient's record and see that he might need this based on what we are monitoring versus the patient too. So AI happens at different layers in the whole care plan and care team activities which happen over a time period. So if you take the length and breadth of your medical history, you can understand that AI can happen at any of these points. At every point, basically AI, machine learning, and all these tools we talk about, agentic AI and everything, they play an important role in basically nudging you towards better care and better wellness.
Wow, excellent, excellent. So what about from a regulatory standpoint? Is this regulated? I mean, tell us a little
Yeah,
bit about your experience with either A, with regulators, or B, maybe addressing the regulatory and privacy concern with your customers.
I think one of the, there is obviously, one of the things which we did in CareIO is when we took an approach to looking at problems, we understood our basic underlying philosophy was data governance. I know it's very good to talk about AI, it's very good to talk about interoperability and all these buzzwords, but if you don't have a good proper data strategy, you really don't have a strategy at all. you
Yep.
know so I think data governance basically talks about how do you basically ensure that your data is clean, secure, structured, and accessible,
Right, right,
right?
right.
And then when you're doing that, you're also addressing those things as to security, compliance, and stuff like that, right? Whichever comes into your data governance. So basically this is like the almost like the base layer of any of the things you do in the future. So we basically, when we created our architecture, when I was basically working on this, I was, because I come from a radiology space, we tend to basically see data at a very rudimentary level because we have to deal with like we have to deal with images, right? We are talking about terabytes of data, correct? And then images have those, that images, diagnostic imaging has another set of security which you have to address, because images have data, and this is not just text data anymore. You're talking about binary data, right? Which is in terabytes and gigabytes. So how do you ensure seamless sharing? How do you ensure seamless protection? How do you make sure it doesn't get leaked out and all of that stuff? So basically, radiology teaches you a lot more what you will learn, more than what you will learn in a clinical setting. But because you learn it the hard way, then the clinical becomes easier, because when you've already dealt with terabytes of data and gigabytes of information, then dealing with megabytes and
Right, right.
simple, it becomes simpler. So I think that actually vision has helped us basically see data more in a very, I would say, more different way than how other companies see that. So I think that has helped. And because of our imaging has been has been an industry where compliance or security has been woven into the fabric from like 20-30 years ago. It's not new for the imaging world.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So tell us a little bit about your go-to-market strategy then. Who are your primary customers and how do you typically approach them?
So basically, our go-to-market strategy is like, we basically, I think the primary customers, we started with the, like a payer and radiology side. That's what we started 4 years ago. We have evolved into physicians and hospitals. Like, we have identified a lot of opportunities in the physician space, the group health space. And I think the way we do that is we basically have always started with demonstrating like a clear value proposition, because everybody wants something, but you don't want to buy something because it is nice to have. You want to buy something because it's going to make your life easier, or make things better. So like, for example, like, addressing specific pain points, addressing compliance and building stronger relationships with everybody. Because if you talk to a physician, they want to work and make life easier for their patients. That's their primary goal. You can remove all the fluff about EMRs and this and that, but at a core, a physician wants to make sure that he provides the best care to the patient. If you understand that, then everything else is just directed towards making that happen. So that's what we basically have been addressing from day one. And another thing which I've learned is that in the healthcare space, there is a golden rule. It's called do not harm.
Yeah.
Do no harm in the sense is that, so it really emphasizes that ethical responsibility for innovation. So basically what it really means is, while improving healthcare, we don't want to introduce any new risks or negative outcomes. You don't want to make things difficult. You want to make things easier, but you want to make them easier to a point where you're not trying to basically kind of make people take like additional steps just because you have something better. You want to make it easier to a point where they see the value benefit, that, oh, you know what, this is easier to do, or I have not lost information, but now information is presented to me in a more efficient manner. So basically, that is what, as a company, we try to always do, is be vigilant about patient safety, data protection, bias reduction, all of that stuff. And we continue to uphold this principle whenever we are building anything. This kind of this golden rule is always in the back of my mind, is do no harm. And as long as we ensure that's happening, then I think we are in the right direction.
So it's really interesting because I can only imagine when you start working with a client, the state of their data. I mean, are you generally coming into are they generally trying to fix like a bigger problem? Like maybe they've let this sort of get out of control and they realize, oh my God, it's all over the place and now we have risk? Or is it more like, hey, we believe that we can harness the value of all the data that we have to provide that better care?
It's like, in the healthcare, it's like I normally have I have like real world analogies. I love to talk about that. I saw about, it's like a simple example is like, you have a closet earlier. When you have a closet which is clean, and then you start piling up stuff, and then you have like a closet full of things, and half of the things you don't need,
Right,
right? That's what happens with healthcare systems too.
right.
We are all habitual of buying new things, shiny things, and then we realize that, oh, we have created a new set of problems. I got these 5 different products doing 10 different things, and now I have 10 different silos of data and security risks and thousands of virtual machines and all that stuff. We basically go in with a strategic approach, and because of our platform being very, very reliable, robust, because we have thought about these things, we can go in and say that, how do you reduce the challenge is you have to reduce. So I'll give you one example, right? It's a funny story. I'm going to share it with you. And I was thinking about this. So, my kids, they were basically fond of Bob the Builder.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Bob the Builder was their favorite show. So I was thinking about it. Bob the Builder always said reduce, reuse, and recycle.
yeah,
He would teach the kids that how you can be more a good citizen by doing these things, right? And I was kind of building the analogy between that. And I was saying, what do you reduce? So you reduce the security risks
right, right,
by consolidating disparate systems. Now, what you do is we love to buy all those shiny things, but then we realize that we are exposing ourselves.
right,
More we do, the more we do 10 different things, the more exposure it is. So how do you minimize that? Is to limit the exposure by basically instead of having fragmented data silos and fragmented systems doing things, you consolidate that into a singular interoperability platform like ours, like what we do, right? We basically consolidation reduces the risks
right,
also.
right.
That's what it does. And reuse is basically when you have data, you have to kind of you create singular pipelines. Like for example, if you go to any health system, a provider, anything, so their reporting data is being sent to 50 different vendors doing 15 different things. Those are 50 different pipelines. The same data is getting copied over again and again and again and again to do these things. We envision where you don't need 50 pipelines, you need just one pipe.
Gotcha.
And the reason you need one pipe is because then you can take all the insights you get from all these 50 things and enrich
right.
your data. So this reduces the redundancy. It reduces the creation of silos. That's what you do. And recycle, I was saying, is the data governance laws, compliance laws tell us that, every country or organization, every country has these laws that PHI have to be maintained locally, regionally, and stuff like that, right? But when you are going from an organization to another organization, like sharing data from an org to org or from a country to country, then the role of master indexes becomes a lot more important or more relevant. So in our platform, we address that as well. Like when you're doing cross organization sharing,
Yeah.
how do you basically and maintain that relationship as well as cross border sharing?
Gotcha. Jessy, have you sought funding for your business?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your experience, raising capital over the years.
Yeah, see, I think raising capital is no fun game. It's like nowadays it's not about a pitch deck, which is going to get you money. It's more about proving that what you can do or whether you can deliver. Even the VCs or investors are looking for more real companies with real solutions rather than just fancy words, like fancy words which you could get funding earlier on, right? So raising capital in healthcare requires more strategic approach, like because the market conditions are shifting. Even the investors and everybody knows that this AI and all has become so prevalent. It's become like the discussion point of every trade show, everywhere you go. So they are also cautious as to they don't know whether we are investing in the right company or we are going in the right direction. But I think one of the things, as I said, that eventually, no matter how much investment goes on, you have to always stick to the core principles as a company as to what you really are delivering. You cannot just get caught onto the buzzwords and then that if you feel left out, that just because you're not talking about AI, that means you are nowhere. But remember, AI is all as good as data. Like we started addressing data governance. Obviously AI became part of it. We don't try to upsell AI because we know AI is as good as the data. So as long as we are maintaining, creating, and ensuring clean and compliant data, AI happens and it is much more effective than AI, which doesn't work on a clean data. So that's what our focus has been, and I think the goal is that for every startup, you have to show the cost savings and operational efficiencies, which we have been able to do. That's the reason we got customers, is showing them actual tangible benefits, cost savings and operational efficiencies and patient outcomes. That is very important. As I said, right, if you don't show that, then you won't get funding because you're not getting, nowadays you don't get funding because you want to create a solution. Nowadays you get a funding because you have actual value or a cost savings or some efficiencies which have been derived from your solution. So it's not the tech which is getting funding, it's the outcomes.
Right. Fascinating. So we're just about to wrap up here. Just in closing, Jessy, what are the maybe two or three pearls of wisdom that you can leave other healthcare AI CEOs with, based on everything that you've experienced and the success and the challenges that you've had?
Yeah. I think the biggest challenge which normally keeps people gives them some gives them some fear is the regulatory landscape. It is important to handle that like head on. Like when you think of starting a startup in the healthcare space, you need to first address the regulatory landscape, understand it, kind of familiarize yourself, and ensure that you are basically driving any solutions. Any solutions you create is addressing that before you wonder about it later on. You cannot do it other way around. You basically start with that. Make sure that you're regulatory compliant from day one,
Yep,
right?
yep,
And interoperability is gonna become the core. It is on the sides right now, but it is going to be the core driver of any innovation going forward because that's where everybody is going.
yep,
And I think so anything you do has to be seamless, allows for seamless data exchange. That has to be a key foundation block.
yep,
And I believe we should always prioritize patient because if we are able to prioritize patients' experiences and they become like a more active participant, so they will basically your solution will have a lot more value in the future. So basically for anybody who's starting into that, if you address these things and engage, you need to have some stakeholders right from the get-go.
yep.
This is more for techies, and I was a techie too. I've evolved into an entrepreneur through good mentorship. But the point is that you cannot just take a technical approach to things. You have to be centered and work with stakeholders like a provider, payers, or patients to identify and validate your needs. And obviously security, right? Because we deal with PHI. So if you are not dealing with security, then you will have a wake-up call later on. So it is important as these five elements like regulatory compliance, interoperability, patient-centric, and engaging stakeholders and data security are the core elements of anything you want to do in this healthcare space.
Yeah, makes sense. Again, I have a number of these conversations, and I'm starting to be able to connect the dots, and this interoperability and sort of in the whatever the governance, right, is just so key to delivering on the promise of what this could be.
Definitely. I think that's where everybody is going. And we all can see that happening, that this is actually going to be like that things are basically evolving into more from a silo to you're becoming more centric and conversational. You're more collaborative.
Right, right, right. Well, this has just been an absolute fascinating interview, Jessy. Congratulations on, your vision and how you've brought things to life so far. And I really appreciate you sharing your insight and your wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Dario. Thank you very much.